Hi, everybody. My name is Connie, and I'm a human physiology major in Sargent. My project is called The Roots of Health, Stories of Traditional Medicine Among Immigrants in New York City. And thank you to Dr. Karen Metheny for advising me through this process. So just by show of hands, has anyone here experienced getting sick as a kid and then having a parent or grandparent tell you to do something that seemed really weird, but it ended up making you feel better? Yeah, so chances are we've all experienced traditional medicine in some way, and here are just some examples. Cupping is a traditional Chinese method that started over 3,000 years ago, and it's been rising in popularity among athletes to relieve muscle pain and tension. Yoga is also thousands of years old, and it originates from India. Essential oils and aromatherapy started in both Europe and Asia, and it kind of evolved into what we know it as today. As a second-generation Chinese American, this is what traditional medicine looked like in my household. We used patches that, it's like a modern way to deliver herbal medicine, and it helps with muscle pain if you ever pull a muscle. Herbal teas were also really common. Benengen is kind of like our version of emergency. You dissolve packets into hot water and you drink it to boost your immune system or to treat colds and the flu. Gua sha, you guys might have seen influencers using it to sculpt their face, but more traditionally, and how my family uses it, is you scrape your back with a jade gua sha until it turns red like that. It's not super aesthetic, but it helps with inflammation. It rebalances your body's energy and it promotes healing. In general, traditional medicine is just any healing practice that is rooted in spirituality and nature. But because of that, it's often discredited as being myth or not scientific or inferior to Western medicine. So why might that be a problem? So for minority patients in America, studies have found that they are more likely to practice traditional medicine, but at the same time are less likely than white patients to have positive relationships with their physicians. And positive here is defined as having effective communication and trust. I've also noticed that it was absent throughout my education, whether that was a lack of books in my classroom libraries as a kid, or now as a pre-med student, I've noticed that it's not talked about at all in the curriculum. And even if you do get into med school, they very rarely teach about it in their classes. I also want to touch on the personal significance of this project to me. So these are my two grandmas on the sides and my great-grandma in the middle. They live in China, and whenever they visit, they will bring Chinese herbs and other things for us to use here, and at the same time, they will receive healthcare in America. But the American healthcare system isn't built for people like them. They don't speak English. They have some different medical beliefs because of culture, and even with the translator, they have a really hard time understanding what doctors are describing, and they get very confused and anxious and are prone to rejecting treatments. So that's why I wanted to make something that amplifies immigrant stories around healthcare. So that brings me to my book. I wanted to make something that was both entertaining and fun to read, but at the same time showcases what immigrants in America are doing for home remedies. My focus group was first and second generation immigrants from New York City, and I picked New York just out of accessibility and also because it's one of the most diverse cities in the US. I reached out to participants by emailing cultural clubs at New York City schools, immigrant organizations, and putting up community flyers. I then transcribed their interviews and paired it with a headshot and some of my own illustrations to make it more visually engaging. I also want to clarify that the purpose of my project is not to measure the efficacy of these treatments. This is because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you believe or whether or not you think that these treatments are effective, because if you want to be a good provider, you have to first understand how your patients approach healthcare and what they're already doing at home. And now I'm just going to read a short excerpt from my preface. From speaking with first and second generation immigrants in New York City, I've learned that medicine isn't just curing disease. It's about identity, community, and trust. I hope that this is more than just a collection of stories. I hope it provokes reflection, conversation, and a better understanding of the diverse ways that people seek healthcare. No matter whether you are a medical provider, a student, or just someone who is curious about cultural narratives, I encourage you to read with an open mind and consider how we can build a more inclusive, patient-centered healthcare system together. My final book has 20 participants from these 11 countries. I wanted to create something that included multiple ethnicities because most sources out there usually focus on just one. And now I want to share with you some of the stories that I got. So this is Siyang, who is a first-generation immigrant from China. And now I'll just read a short excerpt. My ancestral hometown is a rural area with vast farmland. My grandmother's house is a small, one-story flat with an open vegetable garden. The house has a wooden structure and a cement floor. In fact, just a few years ago, it didn't even have an indoor toilet. We had to use an outhouse, and the urine and feces were collected to be used as fertilizer. I want to describe the context of my ancestral hometown because it's closely related to the traditional medicine practiced in my family, which I'll explain next. It was in this environment that my grandparents' generation relied on natural resources around them for medicine. The particular remedy I want to introduce is spider webs. Yes, spider webs. When I first heard about it, I was just as shocked as you might be. My dad told me that when he was young, if someone got scratched by plants while working in the fields or had any other kind of wound on their skin, the solution was to find a dusty spider web from the beams of the house and place it over the wound. This would prevent infection and help the wound heal quickly. This story is from John, who is a second-generation immigrant from Democratic Republic of the Congo. And he said, "The use of plants, herbs, and natural remedies is deeply rooted in my culture and daily life. My family has known to use moringa, often referred to as the miracle tree. Its leaves, seeds, and bark are used to treat malnutrition, fever, inflammation, and digestive issues. Especially if one has a constipation issue, it helps ease the process. I once had an issue with my digestion, and my mom made me drink it. It was very bitter, and I always felt like puking, but I'm glad it helped. I swore not to drink it again." And finally, this one is from Brenda, a second-generation immigrant from the Dominican Republic. Some topical treatments include putting a clove under your tongue and cold rags on shoulders to help lower blood pressure, gargling hot salt water with hydrogen peroxide to help rid of a sore throat, and as vaccinations were scarce, pea showers and baths are what helped everyone's chickenpox during my parents' childhoods. Religion and faith are extremely important, not just in my family, but in many Dominican families that I know. Many believe that the mindset is just as essential to recovery as actual ingredients or resources. Similarly, faith is what I think keeps most of the Dominican people I have interacted with, especially older generations, moving forward and optimistic despite the reality of the hardships that come with being poor or having limited access to resources. Sharing alternative medicine treatments helped build a strong community within the neighborhood my parents grew up in, as they all took care of each other and shared new information and remedies as they were learned. Traditional medicine has helped heal and grow my community in ways that go beyond any specific disease and is seen in the ways that we support each other. To conclude, I want to share the covers to my book. The quote on the back cover, I think, fully encompasses the message of my project. And it's a traditional Chinese medicine proverb that says, "To treat the disease, first understand the person." Thank you. Any questions?
Hi, Connie. Good to see you. I have two questions. One is, having done this project, what for you is the importance of this intersection between bio-Western and ethnomedical approaches, and how is this going to impact your career path going forward?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is obviously, like, I know a lot about Chinese traditional medicine, but I've never really thought about how similar it could be to traditional medicine in other countries. And my biggest takeaway from this project is that the root of like most traditional medicine is actually very similar across all countries and continents. They use like the similar ideas and very similar ingredients. And that's something that I think is really important for me to take with me to my future. Yeah.
Hi, good job, Connie. You're so beautiful. You kind of touched upon how even with the translator, your grandmas kind of had difficulty explaining how they were feeling or understanding certain concepts that might be a little bit like outside regular speech. I was wondering when you were conducting these interviews if you were able to speak in different languages with people, because I know you speak Chinese, and if you felt like there was a difference in how they were able to communicate their experiences, if there was like a different language kind of barrier.
Yeah, so I only conducted my interviews in English, and I think a big reason of that is most of my participants who were interested were younger people in our generation. So even with English as a second language, they're a lot more like able to communicate what they want to say. Yeah.
Hi, Connie. Great presentation. Loved it. I also grew up using a lot of traditional medicine. I know you did. What was one that you hated, and then what was one that you like kind of loved?
So cupping, I really hated. There was a period of time where my family would like do it to each other, like Saturday mornings. I just hate how it looks after. I like don't like circles close together. What I like, honestly, the teas, because they're a lot easier to drink, and it's so common that it's basically like become like a routine now. Yeah.
I actually
Thank
have
you.
a question,
Oh.
Connie. How'd you find your participants?
Yeah, so I reached out to immigrant organizations and cultural clubs at schools, and I put up flyers. So I cast a really wide net across like a lot of different ethnicities, but I only received like a handful of people that were interested in doing this, and I basically was just able to interview everyone that was interested. Yeah.
All right, if there's no more questions, thank you, Connie.
Thank you.